Hey everyone, it's Eric Snell, the author of the Fit Businessman book. And today we're going to discuss the clothing for sports. What is the proper wear, what's most comfortable, and some tips and tricks that you can use whether you're training outdoors or indoors. Now, recently we've been training a lot outdoors, basically because all the gyms are closed. All the facilities are closed, and outdoor the temperature has been fluctuating a lot. So you might be training when it's minus degrees, might be training when it's over 20 degrees. I'm talking about Celsius here. And then we have to adjust a little bit what we're wearing. So I thought we'd go through from head to toe certain things that you can take into account. Now, these are things that I've encountered in the past. I've been training a lot of years in track and field, outdoors year round, whether it's ice on the ground or in scorching heat. And you know, from experience, you pick up some stuff and also from injuries actually. So let's go through it, and maybe there's one or two things that could help you make your training more enjoyable. So starting from the head, of course, in the summer, yes, the sun has a big impact on your performance. And if you go to any elite competition, you will see that most athletes that take their sport very seriously, they will stay in the shade. They will religiously avoid the sun. And especially before the competition, they will remain in the shade. And the sun has really a lot of good benefits for the body, and I for one recommend you to be in sunlight if you can. But for sport performance, it's not optimal, and using a cap is of course very good if you have a sport where you can do that. In the winter, something like a cap or something that can avoid rain or snow from coming to your face actually helps a lot as well. And this is, of course, during the summer, if it rains, if you can protect your face from water or from anything splashing to it, it will make it feel much more enjoyable. So this is one of the biggest tips if you're training outdoors and it rains, is just to make sure you have a cap on your head, something that avoids distractions for your eyes, because that's really, it impacts a lot. It's strange, but it has a huge impact. And then of course, if your head is cold, it's also not that easy to function. It's well known that people should sleep in quite cold temperatures, but also then it's good to have something on your head. So even if it's cold on your face, that's fine, but there are certain parts that you really need to protect. And even now, when we're training outdoors in the spring, I find that it's always good to have a beanie or a cap, something with me just in case, especially in the beginning, warming up. It's easy to take away. It's a beanie you can fit in your pocket, no problem at all. Now, moving down, when it comes to the chest and the upper body, this is something that a lot of people I know like to keep warm. They feel like if their lungs are warm, it doesn't really matter for the rest of the body. So if you go out for a run in the winter, for instance, I know a lot of people that enjoy running in shorts even, but they feel like they need to warm up their chest. And in order to do sports with a warm upper body without having huge heavy jackets on, there's a lot of vests that you can buy. So you can have a vest that really keeps the middle part of the body warm, the arms are free to move, and then of course when you progress in your training session, maybe after half an hour you get warm, it's kind of easy to take off. So that's a really good tip in the winter, especially, that if you're looking and you're wondering what clothing you should wear, you know that you have a choice in the beginning. Either you're going to freeze in the beginning, or you're going to be too hot in the middle of your run. Then, well, maybe a vest could be a good investment. So you have the vest on when you start, you're warm, it feels comfortable, and then it's easy to remove. That could be something that I would suggest. So now we got a cap, we got this vest, and the third thing is to think about how much your clothing it really weighs. So for sports where you have to really move a lot, and you have to move all the limbs, it actually makes a huge impact in the winter if you feel like your upper body is really heavy. So if you have sweaters on top of sweaters, you have a layer that is fighting the wind, you got a layer for this, you got a layer for that, then it's also nice to maybe try out clothing that is really, really light. And there are some sport companies that actually produce very, very light material. And also in the summer, if it's windy, if it's a bit rainy, you can still train outdoors with a very light fabrics. So I really suggest that when you look for clothing, when you do sports outdoors, you don't maybe necessarily buy the cheapest thing you can find, but actually go and try a little bit the more expensive ones, the ones that have ventilation in different places of the fabric, because that costs a lot to do, right? So the cheapest jacket you will find will be one that doesn't have ventilation holes around the body. And when you do sports, it's actually really nice if the fabric can pass some air through. And I actually have one jacket that's in two parts. So it's like a vest, and then the sleeves are separate. And this is kind of experimental idea, I think, for them from the sporting company, that you actually separate those two, and then the air will flow, and then of course you can remove one part as well kind of easily. So I really suggest you check what's out on the market. It's developing all the time, and I really like the fact that a lot of companies are experimenting and trying out new ways to make it more enjoyable to train. And this is also something that if you're not really motivated, then that's the time you go online and you go and buy some new clothing, and that might just spark some more motivation when you get that new jacket and you want to try it. So it's a way to also motivate you to train once you hit this wall of maybe in the middle of winter, it's dark, it's wet, it's cold, you don't want to train. That's when you go online and you buy that jacket. Now for the layers that we use, there's a lot of different materials, and one material that is sort of what can I say, like not spandex maybe. There's these materials that claim that they sort of absorb the water, so that if you start to sweat, it dries off the water off your body. And I've tried different types of garments, and I actually come to the conclusion that, yeah, this tight layer that you have underneath, a lot of times, especially in the winter, just regular cotton would do just fine. It's soft, it will absorb a little bit of water and sweat as well. Of course, when it's really cold, maybe you won't be sweating that much, and then it's nicer to have cotton against your skin and not some kind of special garment that's gets sort of cold. So a lot of these materials that should absorb water, they actually feel a bit cold on your skin, so it might be more comfortable to just wear cotton, and then wear cotton that's skin tight. So not 100% cotton t-shirt that's loose, but maybe find something, a long sleeve, where it's actually going along with the body. Now then, if we go down, a lot of times I feel that the glutes are the main body part that you really gotta warm up or activate before doing any type of sport. And you might have seen me recommend using a tennis ball to massage the glutes, or doing stretches with the band to really get the range of motion open, and to open the hips, to really get the glutes fired up before you start to train. And in order to raise the body heat, because that's usually what we do in the warm-up, right? The idea is to raise the body heat. It's important that you actually raise the body temperature also in your lower body, and not just this popular chest area that you want to keep warm with that vest you got, but also to make sure that you have warm glutes, and that you really can then utilize them when you start to train. There's a lot of tights you can buy. You can put layers on layers. I don't think there's anything special there that we should know about. It's just that I feel like that's one area that in any sport, if I would be strapped to time, I would warm up the glutes. That's the main thing I would warm up. Maybe it's also a little bit linked to the fact that we're sitting a lot of hours. We sit in the office, you just sit, and then you should do some sports, and it's not that easy. Now, if we go downwards to the knees are actually, especially in the gym, where people want to lift weights, you might see people wear different things on the knees, like knee sleeves, and a lot of times I would say it's not for support, it's more to keep them warm. And so if you think that, okay, you don't need to have supports in your elbows and knees, you might want to think about it in a different way, that if you're wearing shorts, for instance, then you might want to warm up the knees really by adding more clothing and not just by doing movements. And I personally don't really use all these extra stuff. I think by not wearing knee sleeves to keep the knees warm, I actually remind myself to warm up properly. Otherwise, I might be a bit tempted to just go and squat a lot of weight. I'll feel like, hey, I'm ready. I got knee sleeves on. Knees feel warm, and yeah, might not be the best idea for me. Then for the feet. Here, the most important thing is, of course, to have dry feet, especially after training, because that's when you're going to catch the cold. It's not when you're running in the rain. It's after you've done it. You really need to have dry feet. There, for the clothing, I would say it's also important to see how soft the shoes should be. A lot of times people have problems with their hips, with their knees, and if it's uncomfortable to even move, then yeah, you won't move. And it's terrible to see people that have had long breaks, and then they decide, okay, I'm going to go out for a run. I want to participate in a marathon with my buddies in 1 year, and that's my goal. I'm going to start training. And as soon as they go out, they can do maybe 500 meters, and then they feel, oh, I got knee pain, I got this pain, I got and I think by choosing the right type of shoe and the right surface, you can avoid a lot of that. So I think you could have different type of shoes for different purposes, and of course buy them again in order to buy some motivation. So for instance, if you really want to do a lot of volume, you want to train almost every day, or you want to decide that every morning you're going to go for a jog, then you got to be really careful where you jog. Try to find something soft, like not the pavement, maybe rather a grass or some kind of sand. Have the thick soles. They're going to be heavier, But if you want to do volume, you really need to make sure that you have something soft to go by. Then, of course, in the winter, there are special shoes that are like real winter tires, that you have almost these small spikes underneath that you can run on ice, on snow, and they're, you know, Gore-Tex shoes that, you know, shield you from the wind. So there are a lot of different options, and I think it's so important that when you start, and I see this with kids all the time, you know, when they start a sport, when they get introduced to a winter sport, if they have the wrong clothing on, they're not going to enjoy it. You can see it when parents force their kids to do ice skating or downhill skiing or cross-country skiing or play ice hockey, and the parents are thinking like a parent. They put so much clothing on that if the child would stand still in that weather, there will be no problem. But they don't take into account that the child will start moving, and a lot of times it gets too hot, and especially children might not notice it that way. They will start sweating, you know, unnecessarily, and they will have difficulties to move because the parents have put too much clothing on them, and they won't have the reflex to maybe adjust, or can't convince their parents to take off a layer while they're doing the sport, then put something on afterwards. And now when you have injuries, you also have to take into account what you have on. And for myself, especially for the lower part of my legs, usually I find it much more comfortable to wear some kind of tight socks, so that the blood flow works better, and you don't, because when you get older as well and you sit a lot, you will notice that it's just like an airplane, you know, the blood seems to really become this big mass in your feet almost, and in order for the blood not to accumulate in the lower legs, it might be a good idea to have something tight on. And it could be long socks, it could be just tights, and a lot of times, yeah, you got to be a little bit careful when you have issues with your blood flow, and take that into account as well when you put on clothing, because you have something too tight, the blood won't flow. And the same thing when you have gloves, if it's too tight and there's no air in between, it's not going to keep warm. So that's something also, that the fact that you feel warm, it's a lot of times that you have at least 2 layers and there's air in between, and that air is warm because your body has heated it up. So there you have it, from head to toe, just some tips and tricks on the clothing, and I hope you have a good time shopping now, and I'll see you there somewhere in the parks training, from a long distance of course, but try to stay safe during these times, and try to stay motivated even though all the gyms are closed, and I'll see you soon again.